All right, I want to give an update on winter composting. So I do two changes now. So here's the bins now. They were originally over there, but it's on someone else's property, so we kind of moved it over here. So the two changes are, one, I don't use a tarp anymore. The tarp originally was there to provide an insulation. So when the pile was heated, it would retain some of that heat to at least try to get further into the winter before the winter cold shut it down. But as I found out that tarps, the rodents really like building houses into the pile because now it's dry, it's not as wet, and now you have a rodent problem. You can see now I have very much a rodent problem because now they're all over the place. So you want to make your pile as uncomfortable for the rodents so they don't make houses. The other thing that I did this year was that I had a hose. You can kind of see the hose right there. Put right on top of this, and that hose is connected to a 275-gallon water collection bin that I had all winter, and that hose was always present on top of this. So there's probably 1,000 gallons of water on top of this. The difficulty that I always had with compost piles was if you were to dig back, you would eventually pull back and hit a majority of the inside would be very dry. And if it's dry, you don't have the microbes, you don't have the worms, you don't have anything, everything shuts down, and now you just have a big dry pile of doing nothing. And it's incredibly difficult to penetrate any sort of water into there, and so your pile is just going to sit there unless you turn it. So I found that when I put the hose in different areas of this and put about 1,000 gallons of water, that the amount of composting in the winter has been significant. One, there's always going to be compaction, so it's not 100% due to the biology. But certainly when I started this, it was above the wood. And if you were to pull back, you would see a lot more worms in this. See, I used to never ever have worms or anything in the compost piles. Now if you pull back, you have worms all over the place. And I attribute that to having it in an environment where the worms not only have the food, but they also have the moistness that they prefer. So if you're going to do winter composting or any sort of large composting, I would not use a tarp, and I would always have a hose connected to it to make sure it's constantly hydrated. It's very difficult to oversaturate this. Like I said, this pile is not that big, and I would say there's probably over 1,000 gallons of water in here. So my concern for having it too soaked certainly did not live up to that, because it is still dry in a majority of the places. Even putting, see, there's some more worms. Even put that amount of water in here, it's still not soaked to the least bit. So don't be afraid to what you would think to over soak your piles, because it won't come up to that point. So something to think about for your compost pile.